We are on 11b6. The Gemara says as follows. Amar Abaye. Abaye taught. Naktinan. We learned. Nigmar dino umet. Now it's important to each time pay close attention. So the way you're going to define how the case works is you take it piece by piece. So first it's going to establish at what point is the next bit going to happen. Nigmar dino, before Nigmar dino. What's Nigmar dino, as we keep saying? When the gavel comes down. Okay. So Nigmar dino, the gavel comes down, they say the guy is obligated to get galut. Umet, and then what happens? And then after that, he dies. Who dies?
The Kohen Gadol.
No. Oh. If we wanted to say Kohen Gadol, I would say Umet Kohen Gadol. Who's Umet?
Oh, the killer.
We're only talking about one guy here. They bang the gavel, the guy gets so scared he has a heart attack.
What happened to the Turkish guy? The
guy saying about Israel.
Yeah,
exactly. He died on the spot. Okay. So this is crazy. So the guy, they say, exile for you. The guy moots on the spot.
Okay, it's over.
Right? It's over, right? Incorrect.
No.
We already learned this halakha, but now you're going to see it played into action. Molichin et etzmotav l'sham.
All right. That's
take the guy's bones.
He was wrong.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Take the guy's bones and we take them to the galut. Remember, we already learned this halakha before. What did it say? It says that the guy will go Shama. Shama, he's exiled. Shama, he's buried. Shama, he dies. Right? All that kind of stuff, right? So we're finding it over here too. So if there's Nigmar Dino and then he dies, you think, there's no galut, he's dead. The answer is no. Since the person has to be there until the Kohen Gadol dies, including being buried there, so we would, even if he's not yet been made to go there, we would bury him in Chutz La'aretz. We bury him in the Eir Miklat.
When the Kohen Gadol dies,
Sorry?
His bones always stay.
Stana. Incorrect. Let's go. Says the Gemara. Nigmar dino met malichin et atzmotav. We take his bones l'sham to there. Why? Dechtiv, because the pasuk says lashuv lashevet ba'aretz admot hakohen. Fascinating. Where does he return until the Kohen dies? Wow, very fancy, Haron. I love it. Okay, you have a parking ticket or something? Lashuv, he returns. Lashevet ba'aretz. Lashevet ba'aretz means to sleep or to dwell in the land. What does it mean, ba'aretz? Ezu yeshiva shi ba'aretz. What kind of dwelling does someone have, ba'aretz, in the earth? Havi omer, that refers to zu kivura. That's when you move in for the long term. That is a land lease. Okay. Says the Gemara. Tana, the Braita says, met kodem shemet kohen gadol. Let's get the case clear. Met kodem, he dies before. Who dies before?
Kohen Gadol.
Who dies before?
The killer.
The killer dies, kodem, before shemet kohen gadol. He dies before the kohen gadol dies. So what are we ready to say? Molichin atzmotav el kivrei avotav. So now you buried the guy according to the halakha I just told you. Now the kohen gadol dies.
Now they dig him up?
Dig him up!
Oh my God.
Molichin atzmotav. Molichin atzmotav el kivrei avotav. We take his bones back to the kivrei avotav, to the burial place of his forefathers. Tichtiv, we'll see in a second, excellent question. Tichtiv, because it says, Yashuv harotzeach, is it kavod hamet? Yashuv harotzeach el eretz achuzato. The rotzeach goes back, the killer goes back to the land of his inheritance. What kind of yeshiva? Exactly the same drasha. Yeshiva in the land? What kind of yeshiva? What kind of dwelling you have in the land? Only thing is, Havi Omer, Zu Kivura. That refers to burial. So the same way I said, Lashuv Ba'aretz, over there, to go in exile means we inter you in the ground in Galut, if it's before the Kohen Gadol died. Now that you've already been buried, afterwards it says that you return him El Eretz Achuzato, to the land of his inheritance. What's the land of his inheritance? His ancestral burial ground. Now, it's important to understand. Back then, it wasn't that everybody had a communal graveyard in Staten Island. You had lots of people who had their own private plots on their property. Okay, on the farm. They would have, and they would be able to go out and pray at the Kivrei Avotav. It's right there. Okay, so if you had a Kivrei Avotav, a place where your fathers were buried, and they wanted to move you there, what are we learning over here? That once the Kohen Gadol dies, they're allowed to move you there. Not that they're obligated. And in this way, these words of the Pasuk are different. Because the first Lashuv Ba'aretz is not if you want. The first Lashuv Ba'aretz, when you die before the Kohen dies,
Obligated to put his
Obligated to put his bones there. Here, Lashu Be'etz Achuzato means allowed to put his bones there. So you're allowed to disinter the guy from the, what's it called? From the Ir Miklat and move him to Kivrei Avutav, should you so choose. Okay? Now, just important to understand. John is asking a great question. Isn't it a bizayon? It's not kavod for the met to move the body. So there's lots of different reasons why one would move the body. So as an example, Rambam's body was moved. Many great tzaddikim
Yosef, right?
were buried. They were originally buried. Yosef doesn't count.
buried, right?
He's never
Because
buried?
Yosef is in an aron, he's in a coffin, drowned to the bottom of the Nile River.
Oh, really? That's what
Yeah,
it was.
the Egyptians were so scared of losing the beracha that Yosef brought to Egypt that they took his coffin, they sealed it from water, wrapped it with chains, and sunk it to the bottom of the Nile
Why
River.
did they mummify it?
They did mummify him.
Moshe made the.
They mummified him, and they also mummified what's it called? Yaakov Avinu.
Right.
Vayechantu oto ha'achontim. And the mummifiers mummified Yaakov Avinu.
Wow.
Okay? So, what are we looking at? We're looking at this idea of even people that were already being buried to be taken up out of the ground and moved. Other cases involved in Muslim culture, once someone is buried somewhere for 50 years, okay? At that point, once 50 years is up, there's no more, in their world, there's no more Kiddusha, holiness, kavod, amet. The body is gone, chalas over. You could make it into a parking lot. So when the Muslims had Jewish cemeteries, and they were willing to kind of give respect to the dead, they weren't giving more respect to Jewish dead than they were giving to their own.
50 years.
The years.
Is that like the Jubilee?
Chalas, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So what happened? You had the Muslims that would come in to say, we're paving over this cemetery. What did the Jews do?
Pick him up.
They took the people out and they moved them kavod to other places. So there's cases where you would move a person, and it's not a lack of kavod, it's for his
I was going to
kavod.
say, you're putting him in Eretz Yisrael.
Correct. What else is there? Yeah.
So we just said if they dies before, he's buried in Galut, and when the Kohen dies, they take the bones.
They can take the
They can.
bones.
Let's say the one who dies, who goes in alive, dies in Galut, they could take his bones when the Kohen Gadol dies.
Correct. Correct. Okay, same. It will be the same halacha. There's one other example I can think of where they would want to move the bones, and that is there's a halacha that in the cemetery there's sections where people sit. You know, in the shul, you have the talkers. They sit one place. People want to hear the Kriyat Torah. They move somewhere else. Right? So the same way there's sections in the Beit Knesset, there's sections in the cemetery. I'm not saying those two are related. I'm just saying.
He's not looking at
But there's sections. In fact, the Gemara actually asks in certain cases, you're telling me this whole thing, Lamay nafka mina, what's the difference halachically between this and this? The Gemara will say, lekobro, to bury him, ben rishaim gemurim. If we learn that it's multiple isurim, we're going to bury the guy in the rishaim gemurim. If we learn that it's something else, they bury him somewhere else. In fact, I remember when my grandfather, Alav Shalom, was being buried, so the guy is running the whole cemetery. He's like, oh yeah, put him over here, put him over there. And anyway, we get there. I don't know, something was off. They realized, they'll tell the guy, I don't think... And it turns out that they was burying him in the section of the people that were not Shomer Torah Mitzvot. They didn't know. No, they didn't actually bury him. But they took the coffin there, and the guy was like, oh yeah, here. Somehow they realized, and Baruch Hashem, they didn't bury him there. They actually moved him to another part of the cemetery. Cemetery is a wild sugya, by the way. I don't know if you know. My grandmother was buried double-decker in a double plot. You ever saw that in your whole life?
No.
They buy a plot, they have the lower plot, and then they put planks, and they bury it, and then
Wow.
two people in plot. They've run out of land.
That's not husband and wife.
They don't have land. No, it could be different people. Not only that, in Israel, they have also people being buried in a wall. Like a mausoleum, shelves. Again, it's not the ideal thing. You're supposed to be buried only in the earth. But when they've run out of land, so they sometimes have to do things in a b'di'evid way. Okay, let's continue. Says the Gemara. So that would be another example. Let's say the burial spot. Like, remember we learned that why did we have the three places of Ir Miklat over the river? How come we had the three Ir Miklats closer together, servicing only 2.5 tribes? What did the Gemara answer?
More killers there.
More killers there, which means
had more dead bodies.
More dead bodies, which means they might have had a scenario where the cemetery in the Ir Miklat is overstuffed, double, not enough room in the portion of tzaddikim. So in those cases, there would be a reason for kavod hamet to move the guy after he died to an appropriate place. You could have a tzaddik that killed by accident. And now he's being buried, and his legacy is to be in Ir Miklat. I'm sure many families would have wanted, just for the kavod of the guy, not to have him be associated with that after death. The Gemara continues. Sorry? Okay, I thought someone says that. Gemara continues. What happens if the gavel came down? This is fascinating. Most people read the Gemara incorrectly. Naasa kohen ben grusha means the kohen became the son of a grusha. How did he become post facto the son of a grusha? The guy's already the kohen gadol. He's an adult.
What is Grusha?
The son of a divorcee. A kohen is only allowed to marry a woman either who's single or a woman who's a widower. What happens if he married someone who was married already, divorced? What happens? What are the kids considered? It's called, no, chas v'shalom. Halal. So what do they become? They move from being a kohen to being a regular Yisrael. Unfortunately, we have some cases like that. There's cases in the community. So the person now he loses his status as a kohen. The guy, unfortunately, sometimes they keep their last name, but they're not kohanim. They're Yisrael from now on. So that's a halal. Okay?
The kids or themselves?
The kids become halal. And we discussed in Masechet Ta'anit, we discussed what's with the guy during the time that he has kids. Remember we talked about that? How can it be that the status of his kids are that they're halalim and he's not a halal? So we talked about that. Right. If he then divorces her, he goes back to his status of kohen, but they stay where they are. And that was what the Gemara was playing with, okay? Exactly, kasher zamam. Now listen to this because I think that this is very important in Begirusha. So the Gemara says, what happens? The guy is serving 20 years as kohen gadol. All of a sudden, some old guy comes around and he says, I was there at the marriage of this guy's his parents. And, they try to hide it. They paid a lot of money to the rabbi was a sketch guy.
And
I was there, edut. And not only that, here's my friend, witness, nailed it. Here's my friend, 2 witnesses. The guy's a ben Gerusha. Now, what did they just do?
They nullified
the kohen. So this guy, nigmar dino, right? The gavel comes down. Perfect timing for the kohen to die. But the kohen doesn't die. The kohen becomes invalidated. What do we do now?
Is that like a death?
Right, but the words say specifically the kohen has to die.
So is it a death? If the kohen dies, let's look at the Gemara. The Gemara says...
Wait, is it kohen gadol or just a standard kohen?
Only kohen gadol. Excellent question why the Gemara says kohen. But it means kohen gadol. We're just referring to it shorthand. Why are we not saying kohen gadol? Who remembers?
Because there's 3.
Those are also kohen gadols? So close. Because there's 4.
How many kohen gadols are there?
Who's the 4th? You're so close. Who's the 4th?
The 3 on the war one.
The war one. The war one's not kohen gadol.
That was 3.
So therefore,
How many
there's
kohen gadols are there? 4?
there's 1 kohen gadol.
1. So
But hold on.
How does
But
he
the
get
Mishnah-
to become kohen gadol?
But the Mishnah.
It's like what you just say.
You gotta be live.
Thank you, Hashem.
But thank you so much,
Very grateful
right?
that Ray's
You
back.
gotta be live.
You are my
That's why
sunshine.
You don't
Okay.
get this
There you
on the phone.
Isma.
Welcome back.
Kohen Gadol can become Kohen Gadol by pouring the oil on his head. He can become Kohen Gadol by, when they don't have the oil anymore, by putting on the clothes.
Self-renowned?
What do you mean? No, not self-appointed. Not self-appointed.
No, they
Either they
put
appointed
oil
you.
on him.
They had this special oil from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah.
They lost it at a certain point in the temple. They hid the oil away.
Okay.
So after that point, how do you become Kohen Gadol in the second temple? After the time of King Yoshiyahu, they would give you the 8 begadim, and once you're wearing the 8 clothes, Ya'ani the clothes, make the man. Okay? So that's
you're
the second
a regular
kind.
kohen before they make you kohen
100%, you regular Kohen, now they made you Kohen Gadol. Either of these ways of appointment, either anointment or wearing the clothes. Third case was Kohen Gadol temporarily incapacitated for whatever reason, maybe he's tameh, comes in the other understudy, he becomes the Kohen Gadol now. So there's 3 versions of Kohen Gadol that could die. But there's another version, at least in the Mishnah, according to the Rabbi Yossi, is the Kohen Mashuach Milchama. He's not the Kohen Gadol. That's why when the Gemara over here is telling you, Kohen Gadol, it says Kohen. Okay, let's carry on. Says the Gemara. So what happens if this guy, and by the way, this would be the case regardless, whichever kind of Kohen it is. We all of a sudden uncover, shock, horror, National Enquirer says, this guy, son of a Girusha, son of a ironic chalutza, machloket rishonim, exactly chalutza. Chalutza shouldn't really change anything, okay, because it's only midrabanan. However, in this scenario, the guy is the son of a divorcee. So what does that mean? He's not a Kohen. Says the Gemara, pligi bar Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Nafcha means a blacksmith, okay? So that was just his name, because that was what he did. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha and Rabbi Ami had a machloket. Chad amar meta kiuna. The Kohen dies. We'll see what that means. Chad the other one says, Batela kiuna. The kiuna is nullified. What's the difference between these two opinions, just to be clear?
One would exile him because he died, and one would not.
First tell me what do they mean. Meta Kohen means the Kohen. It's like the Kohen, exactly like Jack said. His leadership, his Kohen Gedolah is now terminated. It's over. Same thing if he dies and if he's invalidated. Oh, no.
Wait,
You're going second part. First part is we consider it like he died.
Right.
Okay, because the Kohen is now lost his position because he's invalidated as a Kohen. The second opinion says, what are you talking about? He didn't suddenly become a sketch Kohen. He was always a sketch Kohen, which means he never was a Kohen. Which means that when you killed the guy,
There was no Kohen.
and you had Nigmar, there was no Kohen Gadol. What do we learn when there's a scenario where the guy does the act and there's no Kohen Gadol? Forever. He stays there forever. He has no get out of jail free card. Except, remember, Jonah, only relevant if none of the four were there.
Active duty.
So now we just disqualified this Aige.
Right.
Now he has no other Etzah. But what did we tell you earlier? He could go out with any of the other three.
Right.
So the scenario in which he would be stuck forever is only when there are no other three. So in other words, there are no temporary Kohanim Gedolim because the guy never needed one. There is no other Kohen Gadol that was appointed by, by Bigdei Keuna or with anointing. There is no Kohen Mashuach Milchama. So whatever the case is, there's nobody in a position that would have got you. In that case, you would be there forever. But obviously not if there was another case.
This is very far-fetched, right? Or is they're speaking about this because it happened?
What do you mean it's very far-fetched? That there should be nobody.
No, not that the odds of nobody. That
Should be halal.
right. That you have this court case, and that someone in the middle of the court case says,
It's not in the middle of the court case. It's post Nigmar Din. So after the gavel comes down,
Okay.
that could be a very long time.
Okay.
Like the guy could be in Galut for 10 years, and then this happens.
Okay.
All it is it's saying, because we go back to that moment which establishes this guy as your Kohen.
Okay, got it.
Okay? Now hold on one second. Is there ever a case that you would wipe, there's a, what is it called? The run, when you run the boards? What is it called? When you win run the table. Is there ever a case of running the table? Yes. In the second Beit HaMikdash, we already discussed this idea. People would become the Kohen Gadol in ways which were not, they're not the best. It wasn't the best guy who became Kohen Gadol. The guy who got the clothes was the guy who bribed the official, and he became the Kohen Gadol. And the guy would die the next year. Or what would happen? He would sketch on Yom Kippur that he was a Zav, and then get somebody else to be appointed. So he wouldn't have to go in. He would get an understudy, okay? But let's just say you have a guy. Why did he get in? They were getting in because of connections and power and money. There's a scenario where you'd run the table.
No Kohen then.
No, better. If you got this job because of nepotism and position and power, maybe all the Kohen Gadols are your brothers.
Everyone's related to that.
And therefore, the one guy coming and saying your mother was a Ben Grusha, posel all of them.
Qualifies all.
So the Kohen Mashuach, the guy comes in, he pays the money, he makes himself Kohen Gadol. Okay. Who's he appointing Kohen Mashuach Milchama? His brother. This one Edut could knock out all the family.
Oh, wow.
Because it's the same mother. Okay? All right. Let's move on. Says the Gemara. In that scenario, so we have two opinions. I just want everyone to get the question. One opinion says, from the moment we find out, that's if you died. And since you now demoted, you're no longer Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Gadol was terminated. I don't care if he was terminated because of this or if he was terminated because of death. The Kohen Gadol is out of commission. So therefore I get to go out. Other opinion says no. We look back at the beginning, we say this whole thing was a mistake, and it's retroactive that you were never a Kohen Gadol, in which case we may not even have a Kohen Gadol in power at the time. Says the Gemara.
Why is it so extreme that it's as if he died? Why?
So that's a very good question. But can I rephrase your question for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. The commentators want to know, they have a big question here. They ask, one of the reasons why there's kapara for this guy is because when the Kohen Gadol dies, that's like an atonement. What atonement is there when the Kohen Gadol is demoted? He didn't die. The answer is the humiliation that a Kohen Gadol feels, a national figure. Imagine the court case heard around the world, in every Jewish newspaper, every Beit Knesset. Did you hear what happened? The Kohen Gadol. He's a sketch. The guy is he was Halal, Israel. It was so humiliating. And if you remember, we learned in Masechet Megillah about a person who's embarrassing someone publicly. He has better to throw himself in a kivshan ha'esh, a furnace of fire, because like you're killing him. So it's like the Kohen Gadol is dying. That's this opinion. Other opinion says, I get it, I hear that he's dying. But he didn't die today.
He died then.
He died before he was appointed. He never could have been appointed, which means that if we actually look at this objectively, when you committed this crime, there was no Kohen Gadol. So if there was no Kohen Gadol, the regular halacha of a guy who commits the crime and his din, and the gavel comes down for him, with no Kohen Gadol in office, he has no get out of jail free card built in. Okay. Says the Gemara, Lema beplukta derbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua kamifligi. Let's say that this machloket of, do we consider him dead from now and on, or do we retroactively go back in time? By the way, I don't know if you remember this psycho cases like this.
Plukta means what?
Plukta means machloket. Okay? The psycho cases about this. There was scenarios where they found out that a certain person was like pasul, in the highest levels of pasul. Now they thought, oh my gosh, this rabbi that now we find out is an absolute thief, crook, this, that, all sorts of terrible things that he is, disappears in disgrace. What happens to all the marriages he did? All the ketubahs that he signed on. So that is this.
What do they have to do? They have to read.
Wait a second, you understand? That is this. Do we say that now that we outed you as a sketch kohen, that we go back and knock out every korban this guy ever brought now for a guy who owed a korban? What now they all have to do? Bring new korbanot? You see the power here of this statement. Says the Gemara exactly this point. Lema beplukta derbi Eliezer Yeshua kamifligi. Let's say that this machloket from now and on versus retroactive of Rav Ami and Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Let's say this machloket is already a machloket between the Chachamim, between the Tanaim. Remember what we do every time we have this. We have a machloket Amoraim. Okay? The Gemara says, let's say there's a machloket Tanaim. What are we just saying? Same? Matches? No. We're actually asking a question. Because you Amoraim, you're pretending like you guys are having a machloket. This is already a machloket from before. You should have said it in their name.
Oh, right.
So every lema kamiflagi is always like a question. And the Gemara always tries to resolve it and say, no, these are not the same thing. Here's a difference, or here's another difference, right? We always try and scooch out of a lema kamiflagi. That is standard Gemara practice, okay? Not only that, what the Gemara will also try and do is say, you're trying to make my machloket and their machloket the same. No. I could go according to both of those people. I work according to everybody holds of me, right? The reason why that guy who you would have thought disagrees with me doesn't disagree with me is because of this reason. And everyone's kule alma according to this one. And we've seen that many times already, okay? So the Gemara says, Lema, let's say, they're arguing in the same machloket. What is this machloket? The Tanan, we learned, the Mishnah, the Kohen is standing on the Mizbeach. Hadaz in middle of doing the Korban. They're like, step away from the Olah. Right? License and registration, please. Step away from the Olah. The guy's in the middle of bringing the Korban. They come up to him, they're like, no, you're a sketch, ben Gerusha, ben Chalutza. What do we do? Rabbi Eliezer says, all the Korbanot that he already brought previously, Pasul. Why? Because one of the laws of bringing a korban is that the avodah needs to be done by a kohen. Right? Up until a certain point, allowed by Israel. From a certain point, only a kohen could do. So if this guy's not a kohen, all the korbanot that he brought, which were chiyuvim, need to be redone. Manda ma'meta, the opinion that says that it's as if he died, but it only goes forward. Rabbi Yoshua. Now, what does Rabbi Yoshua say? Rabbi Yoshua says. Rabbi Yoshua allows all of his past korbanot. He doesn't allow him to bring any more, but he allows the ones in the past. So let's say that this is the machloket. Rabbi Yoshua that allows the past is the same as our Gemara over here that says that we annul him from now and on. So therefore you get out of prison, because it's as if he died here today. And according to the opinion that says that all past korbanot, Rabbi Eliezer, all past korbanot are nullified, that matches the opinion of the other opinion over here that says that the kihuna is not meta, but the kihuna is nitbatla. It was invalidated, and that happens retroactively. Mandama batla, Rabbi Eliezer. Let's say it's a machloket according to those people. The Gemara says no. Aliba Rabbi Eliezer kuliyamelo pligi. No, we're going to try and make it work according to everybody, because each of the Amoraim would rather have that both Tanaim work according to him. He doesn't want to be at odds with another one of the Tanaim, or to be seen as a person who's stating machloket Tanaims as if they are machloket Amoraim. Aliba Rabbi Eliezer says kuliyamelo pligi. Which one was Rabbi Eliezer? Rabbi Eliezer was the opinion that said that when the Kohen finds out on the Mizbeach, kol korbanot she'ekriv, Rabbi Eliezer, they're all pasul. Okay? So Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, both work. Why? How do we match the two things? Ki pligi, when is the machloket of Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Yitzhak Nafcha, aliba de Rabbi Yoshua? They only argue according to Rabbi Yoshua. What does that mean?
That the past was allowed, but the future is not allowed. Anything that happened in the past was Rabbi Yoshua is pasul.
Again, say it one more time.
Rabbi Yoshua is all the korbans in the past are pasul, and anything going forward. I mean, Rabbi Yoshua is anything that happened in the past was good, and going forward is not good.
So according to Rabbi Eliezer that says that everything's pasul, nobody argues what he would say here. Okay. According to Rabbi Yeshua, who says that the Kohen's korbanot are kosher in the past, but in the future, so according to him, we could have our machloket in our case. And what does that mean? Why does it work according to Rabbi Yoshua that there should be a machloket? The Gemara answers, Man da'amar meta ki Rabbi Yoshua. The one that says meta goes according to Rabbi Yoshua. Man da'amar batela, and the one that says batel also could go according to Rabbi Yoshua. Why? How would that work? Which side is naturally like Rabbi Yoshua? Doesn't need to explain themselves. Rabbi Yoshua said, remember, machshir, going backwards is not a problem. So what would that be compared to in our case?
Well, it's like the Kohen Gadol dying.
It's the one that says Kohen Gadol dying, because he doesn't go retroactive. So it's like the opinion that says kihuna meta, like from now, okay? That would be the obvious connection. How would the other opinion match himself with Rabbi Yehoshua? That opinion that says that it goes backwards, right? In other words, the kahuna is batel, and therefore the guy has no recourse to get out of galut. Rabbi Yehoshua only said it over there, dichtiv, because it says barech amonai helo ufo al yadav tirtzeh. When it talks about the kohanim, it says that God blesses his chelo, all of the things that he has, ufo al yadav, and all the deeds that he does with his hands, tirtzeh, should be accepted. What does that explain to us? Afilu chalalim shebo. Even if you have a halal in the kohen, if they bought it by mistake, the korbanot are considered mikubal. Now, why would we say that the korbanot are considered mikubal? What do you learn? How are you seeing that from the pasuk? Barich Adonai chelo, right? So, but again, I think the Gemara is bringing from the pasuk also of chelo, which is a synonym, if you will, for the halal. And therefore, the Gemara is saying, that so we're moving on the word of blessed abarech Adonai chelo His deeds are accepted. Why do I need the pasuk to tell you that his deeds are accepted and wanted by God? Because we're talking about a scenario where the guy was halal and retroactive. You would have thought to disqualify him, but therefore we have a pasuk expressly telling you that that's not the case. But that's only with regards to avodah. That we have a pasuk that tells you that doesn't go backwards. But with regards to becoming freed from the Ir Miklat, where we don't have that pasuk, there we would go backwards. Okay?
Knock out Rabbi Eliezer? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We knock out Rabbi Eliezer.
No. No one can knock out Rabbi Eliezer. We're talking about Amoraim. The Gemara says, I have two people that say something. One says future, one says past. I also have another machloket between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, where one says future, one says past. First, the Gemara says, same thing. Okay, so this machloket is the same as this machloket.
We saw this already.
They both hold the same thing. Okay, Gemara says no. According to Rabbi Eliezer, nobody argues because Rabbi Eliezer, everyone can agree that Rabbi Eliezer is saying from the past already, which means that when it comes here, there's no machloket. What Rabbi Eliezer would hold in our Gemara. Okay, because he holds once we find this out, we look back. This is the reality. You were never a Kohen. Therefore, all your korbanot are pasul. So too over here, we would go backwards in time. But according to Rabbi Yoshua, one could say that Rabbi Yoshua only said his halacha of backwards is kosher, and it's not NK, even though the guy is not a Kohen, NK. Why? Because I have a pasuk that says so. But when it comes to galut, I don't have that pasuk. So therefore, what would I do? Maybe Rabbi Yoshua would say, I also go backwards. So in other words, you can't in Rabbi Yoshua say that this is where it goes. Okay? Says the Gemara. Nigmar dino, says the Gemara, once the gavel comes down, right? What do we say? That a person can't leave no matter what. And we also discussed, if you remember, right? The very difficult scenario to believe that you could have someone that the whole Jewish people needs, the general of the army, right? And all this, the Goel Adam and his family are going to keep the guy here in Galut. And we said at the time, right, that's such a strange thing to do. Because at this point, it's Pikuach Nefesh. In Pikuach Nefesh, which three Averot do you not give up for? Gilui Arayot, Avodah Zarah, and Shfichut Damim. Would we say that Pikuach Nefesh is not undone by the obligation not to leave Galut? It's not one of the big three.
Maybe it's Shfichut Damim.
Excellent. Maybe the way the Gemara understood this was, the Gemara says in Avodah Zarah that not only do the big three preclude you from being able to use Pikuach Nefesh, you have to die rather than transgress, but also what's called Abizraihu. Abizraihu means literally accessories to those three things are also included. So here, this leaving the galut is also a chelek. It's a part of an act of murder. So one could say that that's part of the big three. Very good. Says the Gemara. Nigmar dino, the guy can't leave. He can't leave to bear witness, we said in the Mishnah, for a court case of money. He can't leave to say witness for a mitzvah. He can't even leave to give testimony for somebody's life. Okay, he's got to stay there unless the Kohen dies. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Shte ta'uyot ta'a Yoav be'ota sha'a. There were two mistakes that Yoav made in that time. Let's just recap. We're not going to actually have time to do this, but let me at least tell you the story now before we finish for today. The Gemara tells us that when David HaMelech passed away, he gave his son Solomon on his deathbed very explicit last will and testament. He told him, do this, don't do this, make sure you do this. Don't let this guy get away alive. One of them was Yoav ben Tzruya. Why? Because he killed the general of Shaul in a tricky. He tricked him and he killed him in a way where he was undefended. So David HaMelech said, I didn't kill him in my lifetime, but you make sure that he gets the same punishment. Okay, so Shlomo HaMelech goes to chase him, to take him down, and the pasuk says, "V'chtiv vayanus Yoav el Oel Amunai." Yoav runs to the Mishkan. Okay, vayachazek bekarnot hamizbeach, and he grabs on the karnot, the horns of the mizbeach. What's the horns? The corners of the mizbeach had those four like little squares that kind of popped out. So he's literally holding on to the mizbeach, like home base, save me. Right, ta'ah, what his mistake was, she'ena eno kolet ela gago. Only the roof of the Mizbeach is home base for a Goel Adam. We'll see exactly what this means. Why would that make a difference? The roof of the Mizbeach as opposed to the side. V'hu tafas bekarnotav. And he grabbed on to the edges. What was the second mistake? She'eno kolet ela mizbeach bet olamim. The second mistake was that the only thing that will help or save a person is the mizbeach bet olamim, the mizbeach of the temple, of the Bet HaMikdash. V'hu tafas mizbeach shel Shiloh. And he grabbed on to the mizbeach of the Mishkan, which was a temporary Bet HaMikdash. Okay? Now, those two mistakes will come back to Be'ezrat Hashem when we start next time, but they caused Yoav to not do what he needed to do to be saved from Shlomo HaMelech executing the wishes of his father, and Yoav ben Siriah was actually killed for the crimes that he committed during the time of David HaMelech's life. We'll come back to these mistakes in the next session.